Hello and welcome to the July programming, The Art of Alverno. I'm Lindsay Rivera and I am the Alumni Engagement Coordinator here at Alverno College. And today I have Pryscilla Balladares joining me, who is a current grad student and also an academic advisor here at Alverno College. So Pryscilla, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I had the pleasure of first meeting you while we were supporting the efforts of Art Start, a program that offers creative outlets for young women and men and within MPS. Have you always felt a strong tie to artistic expression?
Yes, I definitely have. I'm an art kid at heart. I have always loved making things with my hands. I've been in theater ever since I was probably in the third grade doing little plays. I went to Lincoln Center of the Arts. I went to Milwaukee High School of the Arts my freshman year. I finished strong at MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, so I've always loved the arts.
That's cool. And then how did you find art, or did art find you?
I think that informally I found art just organically, like just living through it. I remember being like a little girl. I was born in New York, and I would make like these little art figurines out of like cardboard stock from like, you know, the boxes that you like put gifts in. I'd have those left over and I'd make those and fold them into something and like give them to my classmates when I was in kindergarten. Like, here you go. And it's so abstract.
Yeah.
They had no idea what it was.
What is this?
Yeah, they're like, what is
You're
this?
like, art.
And I didn't have a word for
Yeah.
it, but I just knew I wanted to share it. And then I think more so formally was when I started doing theater. You know, well, I was kind of picked. We do school plays, and then the teacher would say, "Oh, you'd be a good fit. Why don't you do the play?" And then when I went to Lincoln Center of the Arts is when I really got introduced into like the education of art and really learning like the foundations and everything. So I had more of a formal introduction like as I started going through school. So I would say it was like a mix.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think I like that it's something that came naturally to you, and then you were able to like educate yourself in what something came naturally for you.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So outside of the studio, what are some passions in your life? And also we can mix this question in. You have like a non-traditional style of what we consider art. And so could you just elaborate a little bit more about what your art form is?
Yeah, I like to say that I do a lot and I like what I do. So I don't really limit myself to any medium. Right now, my biggest focus is creative writing. So I write plays, I write prose poetry, I do a lot of posting on my social media, but I'm also kind of like now maybe 2 or 3 years deep into collage art. And so that's really an exciting medium because I really considered my art more of the performing arts. I never thought I had the skills to do like visual arts or applied arts in that capacity, but because I couldn't draw. I'm like, well, if you can't draw, how do you do art?
Right.
But that was the medium that really spoke to me and allowed me to create and really be free and really enjoy and feel confident in that. So I would say that's really like my art style. I also do visual art as well, like mixed media. I do videos and I mix them. I've been incorporating visual components or audio components to like my writing and my poetry, photos. So I'm doing a lot of layering multimedia with the arts that I'm doing. So I really don't limit myself anymore.
Yeah, which I like because I think when we think of artists, we think like you have to be able to draw or paint, and I think that that's actually not the truth. And we see art in many different ways, and a lot of times it's different layers of art that we typically wouldn't consider the traditional art. So I love that you have kind of a variation of like what you love to do. So you have been introduced to the Milwaukee community, and you have kind of founded or ventured out into very many different spaces in Milwaukee, which I love. And so we're going to talk about a few of those today. So Milltown Vicious is what inspired you for you to do that?
I think Milltown Vicious has been like an evolving love story. Like I said earlier, I was born in New York. And I lived there until I was 6 years old. So I had like really strong roots in New York. I went back every single summer until I was about 13 to stay in the summer at my grandparents' house in the Bronx. And I went back periodically over the years. So I very much feel like I'm a New Yorker, but I very much feel like I'm a Midwesterner. And even deeper, I feel like I am Milwaukee bred. So, but when I was younger, I was like, I hate it here. I want to move back. I miss my family. Like, none of my family lives here. So there was like that part. But as I started getting older, I'm like, I love this city. Like, there's nothing like being from Milwaukee. There's nothing like being from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Like, Milwaukee has so much culture. Milwaukee deserves so much respect. We're like strong people. We're hustlers. We're go-getters. We do so much. We're politicians. We're activists. We're artists. We're teachers. We're educators. We're 9-to-5ers. We're DJs. We're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We're strong people. And so it really just grew out of a sense of pride. And like Milltown is a term of endearment. Like if you grew up in Milwaukee, you know Milltown is a nickname or the Ill Mill or anything like that. So I really just wanted to own that and like be able to give that to the greater community in a different way, because I just felt like Milwaukee is more than the lakefront.
Yes.
Milwaukee's more than the 3rd Ward or the 5th Ward. Milwaukee's more than the Home Bridge. Milwaukee is 53208, 53206, 53214. Like, Milwaukee is 414.
Yeah.
So I really just wanted to celebrate the city that way. So like Milltown Vicious has an apparel component to it or a streetwear component to it, but it also has like a community storytelling component. So before the pandemic, because that just kind of blew everything up, and we're trying to figure out, you know, how we want to move forward with that. But we were doing like interviews with people, sharing their stories and celebrating people, so that we just felt like that pride. Like, my next door neighbor is a teacher, or my next door neighbor, you know, that's something that should be celebrated. Or my next door neighbor is an awesome barber, or my next door neighbor taught abroad. Like, those are the things I want the city to feel proud of. And I just wanted to share that in that capacity. So it's been an ever evolving story, but things like last evening, like seeing the Milwaukee Bucks winning the NBA championship, you know, it was just, it's like a stamp of like, yeah, this is Milwaukee. Like, we totally showed out, and like getting that deserve that the city deserves.
For sure. And I think your company, your business, like, does that and highlights it really well. And like you said, Milwaukee's unique, and I don't think a lot of people realize all that Milwaukee has to offer. And I think we're starting to get our name on the map, and I love that. So
yeah, like,
really
we're such a cool place. Like, we have places of education that are like, MPS has produced like some of like the most dynamic colleagues and peers that I know, like MPS Strong, you know, and all of the creatives out there, all of the business owners. There's so much to do in Milwaukee if you look. Yeah, for sure. You know, it's great to go other cities are great too, but Milwaukee is pretty awesome. Yeah,
it is. Yes, it is. So we'll go into Herd Space now. So can you you're one of the founding members of this group. Can you kind of just explain what Herd Space is and why you do it?
Yeah. So Herd Space, the call came out from one of the other co-founders, Nicola Costa. She's an alum of Alverno, and she made the call. She was working for Milwaukee Public Theater at the time, and she was like, I want there to be a space for like women of color, Black and brown, Latinx people, everyone, people who are marginalized or people who are not traditionally included in theater spaces. I want there to be a space for that. And so she put out a call, and I was just like, I want to do that. You know, I'm writing plays, I'm acting, you know, I'm in plays, and, you know, I want to do this. I want to find a space for myself. And so it really just started to grow. We have members from different disciplines, like musicians, photographers, mixed media, dance, theater backgrounds. We just do so much, and we write our own original works, and we produce them and we perform them. We perform them all over the city pre-pandemic. And we've been doing them over Zoom,
which is cool.
We've been hosting write-in sessions as well throughout the pandemic via Zoom. We were doing them in person before, so we're like providing programming. It's a lot of work, but it's really a space for like these marginalized communities or communities that are not included to have a space to create and be a part of like the performing arts. Yeah, that's cool. And you guys are, before pandemic, I'm assuming, you guys were at Sherman Phoenix, yeah? So how did that come about? Because that is like such a beautiful part of the community that I don't think a lot of people know really, and it's
I wish we would tap into Sherman Phoenix more, but I love it. So if you want to talk a little bit about how you guys got into Sherman Phoenix.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, our debut show was over at Mackay's Lounge. The name is escaping me, but it was like a jazz lounge right on, like in the Fifth Ward, maybe. It was a bar, and we did our first show, our debut show there. And then we just decided, like, well, that was a Black-owned business at the time, a woman-owned, Black-owned business. And so to us, it was really important to continue to support those communities, like bring audiences there, bring patron there, bring business there. And so the Sherman Phoenix is an amazing space that all of us had already been to. Like we were holding meetings there. We held a write-in session there. I think that might have been our inaugural write-in session. Our first write-in session was there. But it just made sense. Like, you know, we had so many plans to go to other businesses too, but then the pandemic kind of hit and then we moved virtually. But it just made sense. Like, you know, these are our communities. Like, we should be supporting them. We should be uplifting them because they provide so much uplifting to us, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think you kind of touched on this, but what influence do you hope that Heard Space will have with the community? And then to follow up, how can community members be involved with Heard Space?
I think our hopes is that we have a lot of things. We always want to do a lot, and there's so few of us. So if you'd like to be a member, all you have to do is find us on social media, Heard Space MKE. Heard Space MKE is our website, or Heard Space on Instagram and on Facebook. And just attend an event. Let us know what you're into. It's, you know, whatever you're willing to contribute, like, let's talk about it. Like, we're sure we can make it work. But really what I really think will be wonderful is if we can cultivate a community of performing artists so that community continues to grow. Yeah. So that there's more theater houses where there's Black and brown writers, where there's more productions, where there's a Black and brown stage managers, lighting, editing, like, the representation is changing in media where Black and brown people are being seen on the screen, but not to the capacity where it should be, or where it also matters behind the screen. All of that matters too, how we're being represented and presented and how our stories are being told. You know, it doesn't make sense if we do a play that was written by a Black or a brown person and the director is not a Black or brown person. It's not to take away from the exceptional work that director and now Black or brown person has, but there is something to say about, like, how our experiences and what we contribute to tell those stories. So I think it will be wonderful that we continue to attract and cultivate those artists so that they feel strong enough and experienced enough to go out and start to tell those stories on their own. Right,
to have, like, their shared experiences with their own communities and then be able to, like, push that forward and move the needle a little bit and be in spaces that typically you won't see them is really cool. And I think that vision, like you said, it's changing and it's evolving here in the city. And to have a space like that was really awesome for our community. Third one that you have is connecting with Q. Yeah. I said it right. So what goes into, you are a podcast producer for that. So what goes into podcast producing? And then how did you decide to start a podcast?
Well, one of my really good sorority sisters, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and she's one of my big sisters, and she's always wanted to do this, like, for years now, and she finally was like, I'm gonna do it. Yeah. And she's really great talent. She is hilarious. She has a social media, like, gold Midas touch. Yeah. Like, she posts something, comments, likes, shares. Like, she's just awesome. People like to hear her talk. Yeah. People like what she has to say. And so she wanted to do a podcast, and she knows that I have, like, aside from my art background, I also have a heavy administrative background too. I've always been a working artist. So I've always had to work. I've always had to organize and keep things. So she really wanted to tap into that to provide structure. And so that kind of got me into, like, creative consulting. That's what I would call it now these days. I will call it creative consulting. And it's just really looking at show structure, what does she need, content, decision making, being a soundboard, editing, looking for clips, looking for any spots that she might not have seen before.
Right.
Like maybe we shouldn't talk about that. Maybe this is insensitive. Maybe this is a learning moment. Who should we? She does a lot of interviewing. Like the content of her show, she loves pop. She loves pop culture, so she always
Okay.
does a pop culture segment. She always has a guest and she interviews them because she likes meeting new people.
Yeah.
And then she also has like a mental wellness component where she's talking about those things. So it's always a new guest for the most part. So it's just a lot of like thinking about what is the next show gonna be, who
Right.
should be on, and having those kind of conversations. But it's really a lot of fun because it's the kind of thing where, because now I'm getting away from the point where I don't like being the talent
Yeah,
anymore.
right.
I don't want to act.
Yeah.
I don't want to learn lines. I want to be the storyteller in a different way.
Yeah.
So it kind of taps into that capacity where it's like I'm still being creative. Like you could be creative without having to actually put your hands on something or
Right.
be on the screen. But I'm still a part of something that's really cool and
Yeah.
innovative. And so it's been really exciting to do that because I'm like, oh, I could be creative in this capacity
Yeah.
and or provide like be a sounding board for people because sometimes that holds people back. Like, I don't know if I want to do this because I don't know if this is the right decision.
Right.
Am I going to ask my mom who is not into art or my dad who could care
Right.
less or my cousins or my friends who are not into this stuff?
Yeah.
No, you want to talk to someone who is really in the art world.
Right.
Or into podcasting or whatever the medium it is that you want that you can like bounce these ideas back off of. So that's really kind of like what's birthed, co-producing, connecting with Koo has really kind of made me reframe another, like a little branch off of like my artistic work,
Right.
like creative consulting. This is something that I can do and that
Yeah.
people are looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of explain a little bit of what sort of content you guys are doing in that podcast, but where can people find the podcast? So maybe someone sees this and they're like, I need a new podcast, which I'm always looking for recommendations. So
Yeah. So Connecting with Koo, you can find it on iTunes. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and also on the Anchor app.
Okay.
So that's where you can find it. And you can also find her on Instagram. She's Connecting with Koo, and that's with a C. So
Okay.
C with Koo. So Connecting with Koo, COO. And then she also has a Facebook group that is really like jumping. Like
Okay,
she's always
cool.
she's always posting things, asking questions. It's really just a lot of dialogue. It's really friendly. It's pretty funny. It's a pretty funny podcast. She talks about a lot of things. Sometimes it's outrageous. It's lighthearted. Sometimes it could get really deep.
Yeah.
But she's a very transparent person. So it could be really nice to listen to that.
That's cool. Okay. So you are a member of Alverno's Academic Advising. So how did you find that your experience in education via the arts helped you to support other students?
I think that what's nice about Alverno is that we have such experienced faculty. Like most of our faculty are working in the field. So when our students when a new student comes to Alverno, they come to our office first, and then they get transitioned over to a faculty advisor. But I think my art background and even my non-traditional background gives another view of how you can do a job that might not be related to art and still continue to do art, still feed that part of your of something that has that deep desire to do so. So I can have those conversations. I can talk about working in the arts because I have worked in the arts. I could talk about being a struggling artist and why you don't have to do that.
Right.
Like I have a lot of unique experiences that I think it's just great to have that dialogue.
Yeah, especially when you're coming as a student and maybe you are someone who loves art and you're just like thinking, I don't want to lose this passion of mine, but I also came to get an education. So I think being able to talk to you and being like, it's possible to do both is really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to be exactly the same either. Like higher education, I'm not a faculty.
Right.
I'm not an art teacher or anything like that. But I'm doing this job and it fills me in a different way, but I still am able to continue my artwork.
Right. So as a current grad student, because you also are in one of our grad programs here, what drew you to Alverno's curriculum?
I would have to say working at Alverno.
Yeah.
You like go on the webpage and you're like, what are the programs here? Oh, this is cool. This is very unique. I've never seen this anywhere else. But I think that going to graduate school was something that I never thought I could do.
Yeah.
I never thought I could do graduate school. But there really is something about being in this building. Like, you want to talk about being inspired?
Yeah.
Like, this is a building full of associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs. Like,
Yeah.
doctor somebody.
Yeah.
You know, so depending on like what your dreams are, you know, you're just surrounded by it. And it just really inspired me to look into what's the next chapter for myself.
Yeah.
What else do I want to do with my life? I still have so much left to go. Is there
Right.
anything else I want to do? And I just was really inspired by the women in this building. Just knowing simply that, all of these degrees, that was just inspiring.
Yeah.
And so it really just started to make me think about what kind of degrees I would want to go into. And then that you know, threw me into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, of course.
You know, of that whole thing. But really just being in Alverno's
Yeah.
environment
Yeah.
is what drew me to it.
Yeah, I think that is to be said for most people. And I'm an alum, and I went to school here, obviously, and I work here now too. And to just be back home, you know, I totally understand. You feel inspired just with the people you work with on a daily basis, which is awesome. Although you're not getting a graduate degree in art, do you find yourself maybe trying to connect your art still with what you're getting your graduate? And you can share what you're getting your graduate degree from, because I didn't mention it. So if you're thinking of doing that, maybe postgraduate work, or are you still kind of thinking having that as a side hustle and just being more of your passion projects? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I'm doing the community psychology program.
And I forgot to mention it, so.
I'm doing the community psychology program. So at the end of my program, I will be eligible to become a licensed practice counselor. So I can be a therapist. So I can eventually have my own practice or work in that field directly. But I definitely want to still do the arts. I also looked into art therapy as a program as well for the master's level. But it made more sense because of the Milwaukee market to do counseling, to do a master's in counseling. And so, but also in my education, like, I also learned that my practice, I can still incorporate elements of art. If I want to go back and get my master's in art therapy, I still can.
You can, yeah,
I
it's
still
possible.
Can. Like, education there's no age limit to education. I can do that whenever. But I definitely would like to incorporate art into my practice wherever it's appropriate or where it makes sense for the client. I definitely want to do that in that capacity, and then like my artistry. Because to me, my art work outside, when I introduce myself to people, I tell them, you know, I work in higher education. I'm an academic advisor at Alverno. I'm also a creative artist.
Yes.
Like, that's literally the other half of me. Like, that's literally a part of like my identity. So I never want to like separate it. It's definitely a part of who I am. It's the whole package. Like, if you want to know who Pryscilla is, you know that I'm working and then I'm also a creative artist. It's not like I do this off to the side. Like, it's definitely my identity. So wherever I can incorporate it into like my my counseling practice, I will, and then I'm gonna definitely still continue.
Still be a part of you. Yeah, which is great. So in what ways do you feel like Alverno's education is shaping you, not only as an artist, but you're also a small business owner and a community leader?
I think that Alverno, as far as like being a community leader, I think that I work in an amazing department where my voice matters. So I'm always able to speak up for myself, speak up on behalf of others, and felt like my input matters. Now, whether decisions are made based off of that, I'm not the director, so that's not ultimately up to me, or not always ultimately up to her. But, you know, it definitely feels good to be heard and see changes made or conversations continue to grow. And that's really a great environment to be in, because not everywhere you work is going to be like that. But I definitely feel like that's been a great experience. I think Alverno's education has been really unique. You know, it's great to be a part of that community, because now I can tell my students, like, I know how you feel. Yeah, in a way.
For sure. Yeah,
I know what it's like. I'm going to be an Alverno alum too. I know, you know, I know what it's like to come here from a different background and just be like, what is this? Well, what is this? But I really appreciate the feedback that instructors or classes give, because like we always talk about, like, alums know, like, when you're in the real world and you're working, like, if you didn't get something right, it's not like, boom, you got the chop.
Right,
like,
right,
that's
right.
it.
Exactly. You get feedback.
It's curtains for you. No, it's
Yeah.
not like that. Like, you get feedback. You got to redo something. You need to
Right.
reach out. You need to ask for questions. You need to ask for guidance. So it's nice. It makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
like how the education works. And it definitely pushes you. Like, I've pushed myself further than I think I could go, and I'm proud of myself to keep going.
Yeah.
But I think that I know that I have so much that I want to attain, and Alverno's been really supportive in that. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good. So we can end on this question because we love this question to ask. So what does Alverno Strong mean to you?
I feel like I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to describe in words, but I do know that before I became a student and my first few months here, I would go into the restroom and hopefully I'd be alone. So I can have a moment to myself. But I would see that sticker on the bathroom mirror that says Alverno Strong.
Yeah.
And I would look at myself and I would just be like, wow, like that must be really empowering for students. Like, I'm Alverno Strong. And just that mantra of like telling students that, I feel it very deeply now when I look in the mirror at myself. Like, it's hard to put into words like what it means, but it's like a feeling.
Yeah.
And it's a really strong feeling, and it can be a real encourager sometimes, and it helps me to look into the future.
Right.
Like, whether they're my personal goals or my educational goals or my career goals, it really helps me to like keep my eyes on the prize. Like, you're Alverno Strong, and how amazing will it be to, have my cap and gown and take my photo in front of founders and say that I'm Alverno Strong too. It really is. It's hard to put into words.
I know. It is.
It's definitely a feeling.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank you for advising our students, and not only advising our students, but being a leader in our community and just being a voice for many different people within our community. And so we just want to thank you for your time, and we can't wait to celebrate you when you become an Alverno alum, sister. So we're looking forward to having you on that other side soon.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate you.
Thank you.